Hey guys, welcome to Tech Tips. I hope you are doing well. Today we are going to discuss about optional class in Java 8. An optional is one of the important features to be introduced in Java 8 along with others. So before discussing optional class, we should know why the optional class was introduced, what are those problems and how the optional class is going to overcome that problem. So as a Java developer, we usually face null pointer exception. Overcome that null pointer exception till Java 7, we usually use null checks to handle that null pointer exception. So everywhere when we expect the null pointer exception could occur from that particular place, we add the null checks there. But from Java 8 onwards, a new feature, the new class was introduced that was optional. Optional is nothing but a class, or we can say a container that holds the object, either null or can have object or value. So maximum it can hold one value at a time. So let's first create the scenario where we are getting that null pointer exception and we handling that exception using the older way, using null checks. So let's create one scenario. So I'm creating one method, static, that is utility method, and that is returning book as a return type, and that's the method name is generating book info. Let me create one book object using new book, and here this is the ID and this is book name. Let me give the book name 1. Now let me give, this is your book object. So ID is not string, it's long. So this is the book object. Let me change its name. So book, let me return this book object. So here in the main method, if I call generate and returning it to a book object. Now let me print this one, book object dot get name. So let me run this code first. So yes, here we go. Book 1 is getting printed as expected. But now let's create the null pointer exception scenario. Instead of passing the book object, let me pass the null here, because let's suppose this is the utility and this is getting the data from the database, and then the database, the object book information is not there. So we are passing it null because the information is not there to our user. The user is directly using that book object and calling its method. Let's see what will happen. So here null pointer exception is a thing. To handle this null pointer exception in older way, we were using if book object not is equal to null, only then call this, else it should print book data is not available. Data is not available. So let me run this code again. Now the null pointer exception has been removed. Book data is not available is coming because we have already handled this exception. So this is the older way to handle the exception, but using the optional class we can also handle the exception in some better ways. So let me change it to the optional. So optional, as I already told, this is the container that holds the object or data. So container can be empty or can hold value or object value. So maximum one value it can hold. Here I'm not passing directly book, I'm wrapping the book in the optional and passing the optional object there. So let me change it to the optional. So for the optional, we have the optional dot. We have couple of ways to create the optional object. So let me create with of null label, and here let me put optional object. You can also use of to put the object, but I'm using nullable because it could be null. Off means you are not allowed to put null value here, otherwise it will give the runtime error, not the compile time but the runtime error. If we are using the off nullable, then this container can hold the data or any empty value. So now we already have the book object. I'm returning here optional of nullable. Let me remove this. Here we have to handle this accordingly. So let me convert it to optional first. Let me change this name optional book object. So now let me remove this code. Let me print optional book object dot get. So get method is used to get the data from the container, from the optional objects. When I'm using the get, it means it is getting the book object. From book object I am calling get name. So let's see what will happen here. So here we go, we are able to get the book one. But the same way, when the data is not there and we are passing null, what will happen here? So now it is throwing no such element exception. Okay, before it was null pointer exception, now it's throwing no element exception. So to handle this exception, we have to add object dot is present. The same way, not null, we have this present here. Using the is present, let me run this again. So now there is no exception and nothing is getting printed, because in the if, this is not going to the if condition. If we are passing the data book object, then it should return the book data and should be returning the book name. Here we go. So now the question arises, what is the difference between the null exception handling and this optional handling? Because here we are also checking and adding the null check using the is present. The difference is, using the optional, we are indicating or informing the user that this object might be null, because we are not sending the object directly, we are passing the container to saying the user this is the container and this container might be empty, you have to handle this container accordingly. So we are informing the user. Second way to use this, we have optional object dot. We have couple of methods here. Let me use this of or else. Or else means it is similar to get. If the get is null or data is not there, then or else will run. So let me do the or else new. Let me create default object here. Let me remove this part first. Now this is another way to handle the null pointer exception using the optional. Here the optional object is there. So or else means if the data is not there, then this object will be passed. Okay, so let's check this out. Let me print dot get name. So now we are passing the data, then it should print the data book 1. Let me run this one. Yes, it's printing book 1. Now let me pass null here and then run it again. Now it's passing empty. So here in the single line, what we are achieving, we are handling the null pointer exceptions. So there are a couple of ways we can handle it. Null pointer exception So let me use another way. So we have the optional object dot. So we have, suppose, map. In the map, using the method reference book dot get name. We can also use or else here, or pass default name. Okay, let me assign value. So here, this is the example to extract the name from the object that is being passed from this generating book info. If the data is coming from the book, then it will get the data from that book object and return as a book name. So here I'm going to print book name. So here we are passing null, so it should be default. Here we go. So we're getting the default value. So if we are passing actual object in the container, then we are extracting the information from that object and getting the name, that is book one. So here you can play around with the couple of methods we have in the optional class. We have another method like or else get or else throw. So let me use the throw one as well. We have the optional object dot. So let me use the throw one or throw. So let's suppose the data is empty or data is not there in the optional. So let me throw some error there, or we can use the null pointer exception method reference we can use here and passing it to the object, that is, can use the book object. Here is another way. So if the data is not there, then it should return the null pointer exception. Here we are manually returning the null pointer exception here, or let me run this one. So as nothing is printing because we are not printing anything, let me print something. So book object dot get name. So let me run it again. So book one is coming. If we are passing the null object here, then it's returning the null pointer exception because we are manually saying raise the null pointer exception. So this is the way how we use the optional. So optional can be used as a indicator as to the user that this is the optional, this is a box, it might be empty or can have a value. So you have to manage this situation accordingly. So first one, it is used to give the indication to the user. The second, we have the couple of methods to handle the null pointer exceptions in a better way. We, instead of writing the boilerplate code if and else, you have the single line of code is there you can use and get the leverage of optional in Java 8. So this was all about optional in Java 8. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something from it. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe. We'll meet you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.